Adrian stood at the altar 3 days later, his hands shaking inside his pockets where no one could see them. The venue was absurdly elegant, a garden on the coast where the Pacific crashed against rocks like it was trying to break through to something softer underneath. 300 guests filled white chairs, every face a stranger except for Marcus, who stood beside him as best man. "You can still run," Marcus whispered. "I've got the car running in the back. Just the word." But Adrian was watching the entrance where Elise would appear any second. He'd called her the night after their fight, at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep and couldn't stop thinking about the look on her face when she'd asked if he meant the vows. She'd answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "I don't know how to trust you," Adrian had said without preamble. "I don't know how to trust anyone. But I know that you had every reason to add that clause to the contract, and I know that the man I was would have done worse if he'd been in your position. So maybe that's what trust is. Not knowing for sure, but choosing to believe anyway." The silence on her end had stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Then, she finally spoke. "I'll see you at the wedding." Now, watching the processional music start, Adrian wondered if she'd actually show. If this was her revenge, leaving him at the altar in front of everyone who'd ever doubted them. But then she appeared, and Adrian forgot how to breathe. She wasn't wearing white. The dress was deep emerald green, the color of the ocean in storms, and it moved around her like water. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and she carried wildflowers instead of roses. She looked nothing like a traditional bride, and everything like herself. When she reached the altar, she looked up at him with eyes that held questions he didn't have answers to. The officiant began speaking, words about love and commitment and choosing each other daily. Adrian barely heard any of it. He was too busy watching Elise's face, trying to read what she was thinking. Then it was time for vows, and Adrian realized with sudden panic that he hadn't written any. He'd been too consumed with whether to show up to think about what he'd say if he did. The officiant looked at him expectantly. 300 guests waited in silence. Elise's expression was unreadable. "I don't have prepared vows," Adrian said, his voice carrying across the garden. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. "Because I don't know how to promise you a future when I don't remember the past. I can't stand here and tell you I'll love you forever when I've only known you for a month." Elise's eyes widened, and he saw something like hurt flash across her face. But he pushed forward. "What I can promise is this. Every day, I will choose to see you. Not as the woman in a contract. Not as someone I owe a debt to. But as Elise. The woman who creates beauty out of pain. Who stands up when everything's trying to push her down. Who gave a stranger a chance when she had every reason not to." His voice cracked. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you again. I can't promise I'll always get it right. But I promise I will keep trying. I promise I will keep choosing you, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Tears streamed down Elise's face. When it was her turn, she took a shaky breath. "You're right. You can't promise forever when you've only known me a month. But here's what you don't know." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle. "The man I met 2 years ago, he never saw me. Not really. He saw a prize, a challenge, something to win. But you see me. The real me, not the version I perform for the world." She smiled through her tears. "So I promise to keep letting you see me. Even the parts one usually hide. Even the parts I'm ashamed of. And I promise to see you too. Not as the monster who destroyed my life. Not as the stranger with amnesia. But as Adrian. Just Adrian. When they kissed, it wasn't for the cameras. It was desperate and real, and tasted like salt from both their tears." The crowd erupted in applause, but Adrian barely heard it. He was too busy holding Elise like she might disappear if he let go. At the reception, they danced and smiled and played their parts perfectly. But underneath the performance, something was growing. Something that felt dangerously close to actual love. "What happens now?" Elise whispered during their third dance, her head resting against his chest. "I guess we figure out how to be married." "That sounds terrifying," she joked. "Completely." Adrian laughed, pulling back to look at her. "Move in with me. Not because the contract says so. Because I want you to." She studied his face like she was searching for a lie. "You don't have to do this. We can maintain separate apartments, see each other for public appearances." That was the arrangement. "I don't want the arrangement anymore. I want something real. Even after everything? Even after the clause and the fighting and all of it?" Adrian gazed deeply into Elise's eyes. "Especially after all of it." Elise was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, But I'm painting your walls. That penthouse looks like a dentist's office. Adrian laughed, really laughed, for the first time since waking up. Deal. They moved her things in over the next week, transforming the sterile penthouse into something that felt like a home. Canvases appeared on walls. Plants filled corners. Color invaded every room. Adrian's carefully controlled space became chaotic and beautiful and alive. They fell into a rhythm. Adrian attended physical therapy for lingering injuries from the crash, while Elise worked on a new series of paintings for an upcoming show. They had breakfast together, fought over the thermostat, learned each other's habits and quirks. At night, they slept in separate rooms, honoring that part of the contract, even though the space between them was charged with something neither would acknowledge. The media ate it up. Every appearance they made together sparked new headlines. The Vale's miracle marriage. Love after amnesia. Adrian and Elise's journey. They were the perfect redemption story, and the world couldn't get enough. But Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The accident haunted him. He'd started having dreams, fragments that felt like memories but could have been his imagination. A figure standing by his car, hands tampering with something under the hood. A voice he almost recognized saying, "It's better this way." 2 months after the wedding, Marcus called him at midnight. "We need to talk." In person. Marcus arrived at the penthouse 20 minutes later, looking shaken in a way Adrian had never seen. He pushed past Adrian into the living room, pacing like a caged animal. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked. "I need to tell you something about the accident. Something I should have told you the day you woke up, but I was trying to protect the family. Now I think keeping quiet is going to get us all killed." Adrian's blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" Marcus stopped pacing and looked at him with something like fear. "Your car didn't just crash, Adrian. Someone tampered with it. The brake lines were cut, the steering column was damaged. You were supposed to die on that road." Shock and anger flashed across Adrian's face. "Who?" he asked. "That's the complicated part." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "When you first had the accident, I hired a private investigator. Nothing official, or anything the police would know about. Just someone to quietly look into things. He found evidence of tampering, but he also found something else. Security footage from the parking garage the night before your crash." "What did it show?" Marcus pulled out his phone, swiping through until he found a video. He handed it to Adrian. The footage was grainy, black and white, time-stamped at 2:47 a.m. It showed someone in a dark hoodie approaching Adrian's car, working underneath it for several minutes, then leaving. "I can't see their face," Adrian said. "Keep watching," Marcus said in a grim voice. The figure walked toward the camera, and for just a moment, the hood fell back. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. It was Celia. He gasped, outraged. "My sister tried to kill me. That's what I thought too. But then my investigator kept digging." Marcus took the phone back, swiping to another video. This is from a different camera, same night, 15 minutes later. This footage showed Celia getting into a car. But she wasn't alone. Someone else was in the driver's seat, and when they turned to talk to her, the camera caught their face clearly. It was someone Adrian didn't recognize. A woman in her 40s, elegant and cold-looking. "Who is that?" "Her name is Victoria Brooke. She's a corporate espionage specialist. Very expensive, very illegal, and very good at making problems disappear." Marcus's voice was grim. "She's also been working for several of our competitors for the past 5 years. Celia didn't just try to kill you, Adrian. She was working with someone who wanted to destroy Vale Industries from the inside." Adrian's mind raced. "But Celia's family. Why would she?" Adrian droned on, but Marcus cut him off. "Because Dad was never going to give her your position. You were always the favorite, always the heir apparent. Celia was just the daughter from the second marriage, useful for appearances, but never really part of the inner circle." Marcus sat down heavily. "I think she made a deal. Help destroy you and the company, and someone else would give her the power she wanted. Do you have proof?" Adrian asked. Marcus nodded. "Enough to ruin her, not enough to put her in prison. That's why I'm here. Someone needs to confront her, and it can't be me. If I do it, she'll know I hired the investigator, and she'll cover her tracks. But it's different with you." Marcus looked at him intently. "You're the one she tried to kill. You have every right to ask questions." Adrian thought about Elise, asleep in the next room. About the life they were building, fragile as glass. About the fact that his own sister had tried to murder him. "Set up a meeting. Tomorrow. somewhere public where she can't run. They met at a cafe in downtown LA, the kind of place where tech executives and film producers made deals over overpriced coffee. Celia arrived precisely on time, looking immaculate in a white pantsuit, her smile bright and false. Adrian, this is unexpected. I thought you were avoiding family after the wedding disaster. The wedding went perfectly, actually. Is that so? Because from what I hear, you and dear Elise are barely speaking. Separate bedrooms, different schedules, all the signs of a marriage that's really just a performance. She sipped her coffee, her eyes calculating. But that can't be why you called me here. Is it? Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her the security footage. Celia's face went pale, then carefully blank. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is what it shows. You tampering with my car. You meeting with Victoria Brooke. You trying to kill your own brother. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Adrian leaned forward. Why did you do it? Was it just about the company? About getting my position? For a long moment, Celia was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Tired. Almost human. You want to know why? Because I spent my entire life being invisible. Dad looked through me like I was glass. Mom tried, but she was always more concerned with maintaining her place in the family than actually fighting for me. And you and Marcus? You two had this unbreakable bond, this brotherhood I could never be part of. She set down her coffee with a shaking hand. So yes, when Victoria approached me with an offer to finally matter, to finally have real power instead of being the token daughter trotted out for charity events, I took it. And somehow, killing me was part of that deal. Adrian probed. Killing you was supposed to look like an accident, a tragic loss that would destabilize the company just enough for a takeover. She met his eyes. But then you survived. You survived with amnesia, which was almost better because it meant you couldn't point fingers. You couldn't remember what you'd discovered. Adrian's heart stopped. What I'd discovered? Celia smiled, and it was terrible. You really don't remember, do you? 2 days before the crash, you confronted me. You'd found evidence of my meetings with Victoria, my plans to undermine the company. You told me you were going to tell Dad, have me arrested, destroy me the same way you destroyed everyone else who got in your way. She leaned back. So I destroyed you first. Or tried to. Adrian smirked. But I'm still here. Yes. And now you know everything. Celia stood up, straightening her jacket. So what are you going to do about it? Go to the police? Tell Dad or maybe the board. Because here's the thing, Adrian. You have that video, but I have lawyers who will tear it apart. I have alibis, explanations, reasonable doubt. You'll drag the family through a scandal that will ruin us all, and in the end, you might not even win. I don't need to win in court. Then what do you want? I want you to leave. Resign from the company, move to another city, start over somewhere far from here. And I want the truth about who else is involved. Victoria Brooke's employer, the people as well as the people trying to take down Vale Industries. Give me everything, and I'll let you walk away. Celia studied him for a long moment. You really aren't him anymore. The old Adrian would have burned me alive just for the satisfaction of watching me suffer. No, I'm not him. But I'm also not going to let you destroy what's left of this family. Fine. Celia sighed loudly. I'll send you everything I have on Victoria's employers. But Adrian, she leaned down close. You should know that I wasn't the only one who wanted you dead. There are people in this family who are very good at hiding their intentions. People you trust who have their own reasons for wanting you gone. She walked out of the cafe, leaving Adrian with even more questions than when she came in. When he got home, Elise was in her studio, working on a massive canvas. She turned when she heard him, and immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? Adrian told her everything. The videos, Celia's confession, the implication that someone else in the family might have been involved. Elise listened without interrupting, her face growing more concerned with each word. So what are you going to do? She asked when he finished. I don't know. Part of me wants to burn the whole thing down, expose everyone involved. But another part of me just wants to walk away. Let them destroy each other while we build something new. Elise set down her paintbrush and walked over to him. She took his hands, her fingers stained with blue and green paint. You know what I've learned from all of this? From losing everything and then having to rebuild. What? That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. Let go of revenge, of justice, of the need to make everyone pay for what they did. Because holding on to all that anger, it destroys you from the inside out. She pressed her palm against his chest, over his heart. The man you were? He couldn't let go. He had to win every fight, crush every enemy, prove himself again and again. But you're not him. You can choose something different. What if choosing something different means letting them get away with trying to kill me? Then they get away with it. But you get to live. Really live, without the weight of all that hate. She smiled, sad and beautiful. Isn't that a better revenge anyway? Living well while they tear each other apart. Adrian pulled her close, breathing in the smell of paint and jasmine. When did you become so wise? Around the time a man with amnesia stood up for me at a family dinner. She pulled back to look at him. Adrian, I need to tell you something. About the clause in the contract. You don't have to. No, I do. Because we're supposed to be trying this whole honesty thing, right? She took a deep breath. I had my lawyer remove it. The revenge clause, the penalties, all of it. I removed them 3 weeks ago, right after the wedding. Adrian stared at her. Why? Because I realized I was holding on to it like a weapon, like insurance against you becoming the monster again. But you're not going to become him. And even if you did, I don't want to be the person who destroys you for it. I just want to be the person who loves you, complicated and messy and imperfect as that is. You love me. Elise's eyes filled with tears. I think I've been falling in love with you since that press conference when you went off script and told the truth. I just wasn't ready to admit it, because admitting it meant accepting that my revenge fantasy was really just a shield against getting hurt again. Adrian kissed her, and this time it wasn't desperate or performative. It was soft and sure and full of something that felt like coming home. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I love you too, Adrian whispered. I don't know if that makes me crazy or if it's the sanest thing I've ever felt, but I love you. Not because of the contract or the guilt or any of it. Just because you're you, and somehow that's enough. That night, Adrian sent Celia's information to the FBI and his father. Let them handle the corporate espionage and the family drama. He and Elise were done being collateral damage in other people's wars. They spent the next 4 months rebuilding. Elise's new exhibition was a massive success, with pieces selling for more than she'd ever commanded before the scandal. Adrian stepped back from Vale Industries, taking an advisory role that let him mentor younger employees without the constant political warfare. They traveled, taking trips to places neither of them had been, building memories that belonged only to them. And slowly, carefully, they learned how to be married for real. One evening, 6 months after the wedding, Adrian's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. He almost deleted it, but something made him open it instead. You don't know me, but I know what happened to you. Your accident wasn't random, and Celia wasn't working alone. If you want the real truth, meet me in Paris. The Tuileries Garden. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone, or you'll never know who really wanted you dead. Adrian showed the message to Elise. She read it twice, her face unreadable. It could be a trap, she said. Probably is. But you're going anyway. I need to know. Not for revenge, not to fight anyone. I just need to know who I was running from when I crashed that night, and why. Elise was quiet for a long moment. Then she grabbed her laptop and pulled up a flight booking site. We're going to need 2 tickets to Paris. The message said to come alone. I don't care what the message said. We're married. For real this time. Which means where you go, I go. Especially when you're walking into something that could get you killed. They landed in Paris 36 hours later. The city was beautiful in late autumn, all golden light and falling leaves. They checked into a hotel near the Louvre, and Adrian spent the day pacing while Elise tried to paint and failed to focus. At 11:30 that night, they took a taxi to the Tuileries Garden. The place was nearly empty, just a few late-night wanderers and homeless people sleeping on benches. Adrian insisted Elise wait by the entrance, far enough away to be safe, but close enough to call for help if something went wrong. At precisely midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows near the central fountain. It was the woman from the video, Victoria Brooke. She looked older in person, her face lined with the kind of exhaustion that came from living too many lives. Mr. Vale, I wasn't sure you'd come. You said you had information about who wanted me dead. I do. But first, you need to understand something. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just the person people hire when they need something difficult done. She lit a cigarette, her hands shaking slightly. Celia hired me to sabotage you, yes. But Celia was working for someone else. Someone who's been manipulating your family for years. Who? Victoria took a long drag on her cigarette. Your mother. Adrian's world shook. What did you just say? Catherine Vale. She's been quietly destabilizing the company for the past decade, moving assets, creating vulnerabilities, all while playing the perfect society wife. She wanted your father's empire, but she wanted it without the responsibility of actually running it. So she's been engineering its collapse, piece by piece, while setting herself up to walk away with a fortune when it all falls apart. That's insane. My mother loves my father. Victoria laughed bitterly. Your mother loves money and security. Your father just happened to provide both. But she's been planning her exit for years, and you were the biggest obstacle. Victoria pulled out a folder and handed it to him. This is everything. Bank transfers, emails, documented meetings with competitors. Your mother's been selling Vale Industries secrets for a decade. Celia was just her latest pawn. Adrian opened the folder with numb fingers. Page after page of evidence, meticulously documented. His mother's signature on financial documents. Emails discussing company vulnerabilities. A decade of betrayal laid out in black and white. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired. Tired of being the person people hire to destroy their families. Tired of cleaning up rich people's messes. Victoria dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her heel. And most importantly, because your mother didn't pay me the second half of what she owed. So consider this my resignation letter. She walked away, disappearing into the Paris night, leaving Adrian alone with the truth. When he got back to Elise, he was shaking. She took one look at his face and pulled him close, holding him while he tried to process what he'd learned. They walked back to their hotel in silence, the folder clutched in Adrian's hands like evidence of a crime he couldn't quite believe. In their room, Elise made tea while Adrian sat on the bed, staring at nothing. Finally, she sat beside him and took his hand. What are you going to do? I don't know. This is my mother. The woman who raised me, who supposedly loved me. And she tried to have me killed so she could steal from my father and walk away rich. But that's the woman who raised the old you. The Adrian who destroyed people for sport. Maybe in her twisted way, she thought she was protecting herself from the monster she helped create. Elise squeezed his hand. Don't get me wrong, I'm not defending her. What she did is unforgivable. But I understand what it's like to be so desperate, so trapped, that you make choices that destroy you along with everyone else. Adrian looked at her. This woman who'd been given every reason to hate him, but chose love instead. I keep waiting for some memory to return. Some flash of recognition that would tell me who I really am. But it never comes. All I have is this life. This moment. These choices. And I'm so tired of being defined by what the old me did and what was done to me. Then don't be. Define yourself by what you do next. They flew back to Los Angeles the next morning. Adrian didn't call his mother, didn't confront her or threaten her or demand explanations. Instead, he went to his father's office and laid everything out. The videos, the documents, even Victoria's confession. All of it. His father aged a decade in the span of an hour. When Adrian finished, the older man sat in silence for so long that Adrian wondered if he'd broken something fundamental in him. Then the words out of his mouth shocked Adrian even more. I knew, his father finally said. Not the full details, of course. But I knew Catherine wasn't happy. Knew she was pulling away. I just thought. He laughed bitterly. I thought if I gave her enough money, enough status, enough freedom, she'd stay. I thought I could buy her loyalty the same way I bought everything else. What are you going to do? Isn't it obvious? I'm going to divorce her. Quietly and quickly. Before this becomes a public scandal that destroys what's left of the company. He looked up at Adrian, and for the first time, there was something like respect in his eyes. You could have used this against me. Could have leveraged it to take control of the company, to punish me for how I treated Elise, for how this family treated you. I'm not interested in punishing anyone anymore. I just wanted you to know the truth. His father nodded slowly. To think the old you would have gone for the throat. He would have craftily used this as a weapon. I know. Elise told me about him. About all the ways he hurt people. Adrian stood up. But I'm not him. I'm just someone trying to figure out how to live without destroying everything I touch. And I think that starts with walking away from this family's endless wars. What does that mean? It means I'm resigning from Vale Industries. Officially and permanently. I'll sign over my shares to Marcus. Let him deal with the corporate politics and the power struggles. Adrian walked to the door, then turned back. But I want your word on something. Elise's contract, the promises I made to her. I want you to honor all of it, even after I leave. The studio, the introductions, the support for her career. She's earned it, and she deserves it. His father was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. You have my word. For what that's worth. It's enough. Adrian and Elise moved out of the penthouse a month later. They bought a small house in Venice Beach, the kind of place with creaky floors and walls that needed painting and a backyard just big enough for a garden. Elise turned the garage into a studio. Adrian started teaching business ethics at UCLA, which Marcus found endlessly amusing. They had breakfast on their little patio every morning, watching the sun rise over the ocean. They fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes and whether to get a dog. They made love in their actual shared bedroom, the contract's separation clause finally and completely abandoned. They built a life that was messy and imperfect and completely, beautifully theirs. One evening, almost a year after the wedding, Adrian was grading papers when Elise came and sat beside him on the couch. She had that look on her face, the one that meant she had something important to say. I've been thinking about the accident, she said. Okay. Adrian sat up to listen. And I realized something. You were driving on the Pacific Coast Highway that night. In the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. The police report said you were heading north, away from the city. She took his hand. Where were you going, Adrian? I don't know. I've never been able to figure that out. I think you were running. I think the old you figured out what his mother was doing, what his sister was planning, and he was scared. Maybe for the first time in his life, he was genuinely afraid. So he got in his car and he started driving, and he didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away. Adrian thought about this, about the man he used to be finally understanding that the empire he'd helped build was rotting from the inside. Maybe you're right. And then the brakes failed, and the steering went out, and he crashed. And in that moment, in that split second before everything went dark, I think he might have felt relief. Because losing everything, even his life, was better than continuing to be the person he'd become. Adrian's throat tightened. That's a sad story. It is. But here's the beautiful part. Elise smiled through tears. He didn't die. He woke up with a chance to be someone different, to make different choices, to fall in love with the woman he'd hurt and actually deserve her this time. She pressed her hand to his chest. Maybe losing everything was the only way for you to find out who you really are. Adrian pulled her close, this woman who'd saved him in ways she'd never fully understand. And who am I? You're Adrian. Just Adrian. Not Adrian Vale, the stoic corporate heir. Not Adrian, the dreaded monster. Not even Adrian with amnesia. Just you here, now choosing to be better. Is that enough? It's everything. He smiled, content. They sat together in their small house, with its creaky floors and walls that still needed painting, and Adrian felt something he'd been searching for since the moment he woke up in that hospital bed. Peace. The nightmares about the crash faded. The questions about who he used to be became less urgent. The fear that the old Adrian might somehow return, might resurface and destroy this fragile happiness, gradually disappeared. Because here was the truth that Adrian finally understood. He wasn't the man he used to be, and he never would be again. The accident hadn't just taken his memories. It had given him a gift, a chance to rebuild himself from nothing, to choose his own values, to become someone he could actually respect. And he'd chosen to become someone who loved Elise Moreau, someone who taught instead of destroyed, someone who walked away from power instead of grasping for more. And most importantly, someone who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is forgive, both others and yourself. 2 years after the wedding, exactly as the original contract specified, Adrian and Elise sat in a lawyer's office for what should have been their divorce proceedings. The lawyer, an older woman with kind eyes, looked confused. I'm sorry, but I'm not clear on why you're here. The contract stipulates a clean separation after 2 years, but from what I can see, you two are actually happy together. Adrian and Elise looked at each other and laughed. We wanted to make sure we formally terminated the contract, Elise said. The old one, with all its clauses and requirements and business arrangements. We're staying married, but we want it to be real. No more paperwork defining our relationship. The lawyer smiled and pulled out a simple dissolution document. Then sign here, both of you. And congratulations. Not everyone gets to fall in love with their spouse after the wedding. They signed, officially ending the contract that had brought them together. And then they went home to their small house by the beach and continued building the life they'd chosen, living happily ever after. If you've made it this far, If Adrian and Elise's story has moved you or made you think about second chances and the power of choosing who you want to be, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, because there are so many more stories like this to tell. Stories about people who refuse to be defined by their worst moments, who choose love over revenge, who prove that redemption isn't just possible but worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling me what you think. Would Adrian still be the same person if his memories ever returned? Could you forgive someone who destroyed your life if they genuinely changed? And smash that like button if you believe that love can bloom even in the ashes of betrayal. This is the kind of story that reminds us that we're never truly trapped by our past, and that every day is a chance to become someone new, someone better. Adrian lost his memory and discovered he'd destroyed Elise's life. But in the end, they both found something more valuable than revenge or justice. They found each other. They found forgiveness. They found peace. And if that resonates with you, if you've ever wanted a second chance at being the person you were meant to be, if you've ever wondered whether it's possible to start over when everything you thought you knew about yourself turns out to be wrong, then stick around. Because the best stories are the ones that remind us we're all capable of change, of growth, of becoming more than the sum of our mistakes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.